Okay. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. It's me, Jackson, and we've got
Wait,
very
wait.
sorry.
Intro. You're on.
I'm a tourist. Okay. Well, hello everyone. It's me. Welcome back. And I'm on with a very special guest today, Doc Savage. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and it's a privilege to finally sit down with you after, let me see, at least several years of really appreciating your science.
Yeah, I've been we've certainly been aware of each other, which is kind of funny. I keep meeting people on the internet who are like, I've been watching your videos for the past few years now, and I'm like, why didn't you say anything? You know,
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a loosely affiliated community, but as I mentioned to you earlier, Jackson, I finally discovered YouTube as an older guy, and then discovered Kent Hovind, and then realized that anything that I had to say had already been said. It's like, oh, I don't need to deal with this douchebag because other guys have done it. So well done.
oh well, thanks. I do though always appreciate more input and insight because it takes everybody to kind of beat down on creationism. I mean, look how much money Ken Ham makes a year. Look at how much money Kent Hovind makes a year.
Yeah, tax
Quite a
free, tax
yeah,
free.
quite a few people with handing them money and stuff, and so the fact that we can all kind of get together and share ideas and stuff is what is driving their population down, according to the census or the censuses that have been done on this relevant
Yeah, yeah,
material.
absolutely. And I'm very much a First and, in fact, Second Amendment proponent. That means you have a right to say whatever you want, but it doesn't mean you have a right to your own facts. And when people's religious practice, spiritual practice, or other supernatural beliefs cross into my territory and they start saying things that are a little bit hinky or totally bogus, then it's my issue. Then it's in my wheelhouse. So to be clear, I have no issue with people who have faith
Yeah, yeah,
when it makes their lives better and more meaningful. I would celebrate that and I fight for their right to do it. But when they start telling big porky pies to the kids, and when there's a message of hate tied up in it, they can all shampoo my balls. I will not tolerate it.
yeah, and it is especially frustrating that the that part of the message, not even just the hate part, that it when it interferes in medicine and things like that with faith healing and anti-vaxxers and all that stuff, which leads to actual deaths. So
Actions. Yeah.
yeah, has actual ramifications, and so that's all fun stuff. And I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that as we broach the dreaded C word.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very, and to be very clear, it's very easy to be an intellectual when you're talking about hypotheticals. But when you're talking about your own people, your own tribe, the people that you love and care about, it becomes very different very quickly. And a personal anecdote is I have a sister who I love very dearly, who dabbled with Jehovah's Witnesses things for a while as a function of a relationship. And haven't we all done that? Haven't we all gone that slight extra step because our partner, our lover, was into that? I've done it. She did it. And we had a discussion about blood transfusions. And she said, no, 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 no. I said, well, okay, I love you. Here's how it works out. If you're ever in a situation where you need a blood transfusion and you won't get one because God, I'll have you committed under the Mental Health Act in about 5 seconds. and then you can be pissed off at me for doing that for the rest of your long life, and I'll deal with it because you'll be alive. So when it becomes personal, very often the absurdities get stripped away very quickly, and in this public health environment, that's happening all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it is kind of it's kind of insane at or the rate at which it appears to be happening right now, because this is by no means the first pandemic in human history, nor is it the first disease that has had large or high mortality rates, which or we've had the internet. We've had the internet for years, and yet this seems to be, at least in my experience from the ones over the past several years, kind of the first one where it's all wrapped up in numerous conspiracy theories and seeing things like the Copeland video where he's like, the virus is dead, it's gone, stuff like that.
That was a good one.
I've like never seen stuff on this scale. Obviously, you have like faith healing people and stuff like that who have always existed, but I've never seen it on this scale, and it's absurd.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think the scale is different because, I can sit here in my kitchen and talk to 50 people all over the world really easily. But going back to the various outbreaks of the bubonic plague, different plague, same kind of psychology, the exact same things happened. From the Dark Ages outbreaks where you had the flagellant cults, we've sinned, and they were crucifying people and doing all this weirdness, all the way through to the 15th and 16th century outbreaks in Europe, in places that I've lived, where dancing to death became a thing. So it was like the ultimate bubonic plague rave, as well as sexual, orgies and such like. What I'm saying is people have been people for as long as we've been people, and there are always whack jobs who respond to high stress with some displacement behavior. And if you've read, Aubrey Manning's books about and Skinner about animal behavior, we do that. If we're put in a place where we can't do dick all, we find something else to occupy our time. And that's what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's having to, and that's why we put out in large part the video on the coronavirus. We wanted to address some of the, what it is, how it started, or how it is believed at this time to have been started, and some of the conspiracy theories that are surrounding it. And some of them, even I've heard my own family members say, and it's ridiculous things like the hint that, oh, maybe the Chinese started it for whatever reason, or they made it in the lab and it got out. It's like this. These are Alex Jones conspiracies.
Yeah, and I'm going to go all out here. I'm going to push it all right into the middle. We are the survivors. We're the ones who realized that sometimes the rushes do contain a predator. So we're tuned to find risk. And if we don't know the answer, we make up a story that fits the risk gap. And I've realized in the last couple of months that my weird training and experience means that I can see things that most people can't actually see, and they're making up stories to fit that gap. And what I mean by things that people can't actually see is the invisible infectious world that has molded our culture forever. And it is a thing that humbles us in the same way as earthquakes and volcanoes have to humble us, because they're going to happen. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You have to deal with it like infectious disease. And we're really equipped to deal with it. But there's a lot of gaps in understanding, and people will fill those gaps with whatever comforts them, even if it's extra fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. If you've ever seen Fox News, yeah, I think that's a perfect description of that. kind of the sort of 1984. We're always at war with somebody, even
Yeah.
when we aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very basic kind of dissection of animal behavior. You know, you put people under stress, and they're more likely to adopt bizarre positions or bizarre political statements. One thing I saw on Fox was really cool, though. There was a lady who was really sincerely complaining that and really upset that she couldn't get her nails and her hair done quite as often. And it was like, this is a real issue for me. It's like an existential crisis. I'm like, I'll burn your hair off for you. How would you like that?
We can take some shears to your lovely locks and just,
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the 21st century first world person with all of the privilege cards except the male privilege card, which I have. So, you know, I'm speaking from a higher level and I'm going, you need to cool your jets just a little bit.
little tittle, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
Come dig some graves and let's talk about your nails. Let's do that.
She might have to wear gloves. Got to protect the nails.
Mm-hmm.
When the coronavirus was just starting to hit in the U.S., in California and Washington and New York, the big hubs. I don't know if you saw the stories, but people were going on spring break in Florida.
Oh, I've been watching this
to the beaches. Oh boy.
Yeah. I've been watching this essentially live for the last few months because, and again, perhaps personal oversharing. I finished an appointment here in Maastricht and had 2 months of sort of my vacation between jobs, and then this thing happened, and now I'm doing what I would be doing, except talking to people who are really fucking shit scared, like the UN and whatnot. So I personally, I'm doing what I would be doing anyway. I live in an attic full of books and I drink wine and talk about infectious disease.
So you would you say you drink and you know things?
Yeah, but I mean, I would urge caution. Just because you're a drunk painter doesn't mean you're Jackson Pollock, and just because you're me and you drink doesn't mean you know Dick. But everything that I talk about is derived from the World Health Organization live statistics and infectious disease, which is a real thing.
Impossible.
Yeah, it's actually been an enormous sculptor of our culture, our socio-cultural practices, our economies, and our family structures for as long as we've been people, and probably quite a long time before that. But most folks aren't aware of it.
I totally forgot. Hello, everyone. Yeah, there in the chat. Oh, RJ's here. Hello, RJ, and Call Me Emo, and Brian, and everybody. Hello, all people.
Yeah, hi all, and hi all the order assets that may be tuning in. And I'd like to say, my time here is to be a resource for everyone involved, and hopefully to be a little bit funny if I can. But
yeah,
the most important thing is to address people's questions and demystify some of the stuff that's going on, because the shit has hit the fan, but it's done that many times in the past, and misinformation has a body count attached to it. So let's not do that if we can avoid it.
Yeah, it's there's a sort of hierarchy of stupid that we see in the world, and we were talking a bit about it before we came on with Standing and Raw, Mad, and Neffy. Oh Lord.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are astonishing, but as we've discussed, I think they're the legitimately handicapped people in this particular community.
Right. Yeah. Sadly, one person, one orange person, who has a lot of power and not a good grasp on, or any grasp on, science or medicine, is in a very powerful position and is not handling the situation well. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean that's a great tragedy, but it's also the saving grace of democracy, because he can go as easily as he arrived, and he will, and we'll all be fine. But you guys elected a vengeful retard.
I mean, that's one way of describing him.
I mean, if I, without any effort, could have a better grasp on U.S. foreign and domestic policy than your president on any given day, that's a bad sign. President Obama would be welcome in my home with my family. President Trump isn't welcome in my country based on what the government said. They're like, you can come here, but we're doing dick all for you.
Yeah.
So if President Trump asked me to talk to him about things, I would, because I respect the office of the President of the United States of America. And that's not the same thing as respecting the incumbent.
Well, sure.
I absolutely don't.
Well, because we have Fauci right now, who is, I think, attempting to sort of help the government get a grasp of the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, I just linked a thing where Fauci called into the Jimmy Dore show in the private chat, where he delivered a coherent and positive contribution to public health in the US, much more so than the president has. For clarity, it's not really Tony Fauci, but it's what Tony Fauci would have said if he had been allowed to say it. And I've watched this maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 80 and 90 times.
Yeah.
And it's really worth the repetition if we can get away with it.
Oh, yeah. That's, oh, man. I've been watching different little segments where, like Fox or some other conservative person, like, has either like a medical professional or someone else, and they come on and they say, well, yeah, the administration just handled this terribly. It was completely botched. And they're like, well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Bye. Don't come back.
I mean, basically, the administration did all of the things that Italy did wrong in the 13th, 15th, 17th, and 21st century again.
Well, you know,
I mean, you kind of got to shoulders of giants and whatnot. And Mr. Trump, you're not a giant. You don't know the shoulders of anyone. And quite frankly, I mean, I don't want to make fun of this, but it's a true statement from my perspective. His his willful misrepresentation of reality and his flagrant behavior is a crime against humanity, because it's cost thousands of lives in the last week. And you know, if I'm asked to talk about that at Nuremberg or wherever, I'd be happy to do it, because this is an evidentiary case. It is strongly driven by what he knows, and I know he knows, and what he says that differs from what he's been told.
Yeah, absolutely. So, turning away from the
yeah, let me shut my mouth. I think I've done my bit here. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later.
Have a nice day. Yeah. Well, you know, it's all right. We're all friends here. So let's. Well, one thing we didn't do, which I usually do when I start these things, but we had already kind of been talking, and so we just kind of slid into the conversation. Give the audience who may not be familiar, or some of them may not be familiar with you, a bit of your background, if you will, please.
Yeah, that's really important, and thanks for the opportunity. So, most importantly, I am not a physician. I've been corrected on ambiguities in previous presentations, and it's important that that's clear. My academic background is in medical microbiology and subsequently at the doctoral level in biochemistry. And for the last 25 years, I've been in either research and development or industrial development of vaccines, biopharmaceuticals. And I've also spent time seconded to various government organizations for emergency planning and pandemic management. I've never served in the military, but I've been around and seconded to various armed organizations as a function of that government organization. At the present time, I live in Maastricht, and I live in an attic full of books and drink wine and talk about pandemics because we have one.
That's true. Where you are, Maastricht? That I'm sorry. That is the last epoch of the Cretaceous.
Yeah, it is. And there's a
Yeah.
quarry really nearby here where you can go and it's all like dug out for you. It's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I'm a fossil hunter, and I was fascinated by that from day one. So yeah, I'm a biologist who liked to know how everything worked, and my career is kind of preventing and controlling infectious disease, and trying to understand it a little bit better. And we're getting really good at it. And it's not caused by 5G, by the way.
What are you?
Just
You're a shill for the deep state.
yeah. Can you imagine in the US, all the guys going, yeah, I gave you the crabs, darling, but it was the cell phone signal that caused the infestation in my pubic hair. To say that 5G causes coronavirus is that ridiculous.
I have vaguely heard of it. I haven't looked it. I don't know what the source of it is, but I have heard friends of mine sort of joke about it, and I'm why this one?
Places with 5G tend to be quite advanced in terms of infrastructure and have international airports, and airports spread disease, and yeah, it's a whole thing of correlation equals
So
causation,
if you have, I got you. So if you have a mustache, then you hate the Jews, right?
precisely.
Okay, gotcha. We do have a question from the audience from Dragnot. He says, ask about the inverse relationship between communicability and lethality. That is a good place. That's a good question.
That's really good, Drag. So I'm going to cite Ebola on this as an example. Ebola is a highly communicable and highly pathogenic disease. But because it's more pathogenic than communicable, what usually happened is a whole bunch of people get it and die in place and don't spread it around. And that's pretty much like having a very isolated bushfire. It's there, it does the thing, it causes damage, and it's done. But if you have a condition like COVID-19, which is potentially lethal to about 3 to 5% of the population, but you can walk around with it for 2 weeks and spread it, the balance in terms of its overall spread versus its pathogenicity is very much shifted. So you've got a much more mobile but less lethal disease that can cause much more damage by accessing much more fuel, the fuel being people who can be infected with it. So we're in fact a victim of our own success, such that a lot of people around the world can move around really fast and really efficiently. And in the past, we really didn't have this. So it adds it's like wind adding to the forest fire. We can move around, and COVID-19 moved around. Guess what? Exactly in line with international flight paths.
Ooh, who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Yeah.
Have you seen that website? In the video that we did about the coronavirus, we included a clip. I had to do like a screen record of this website. Next Strain is the name of it, where it shows the mutate. It shows, so it's got a global map, and it shows the mutations of the virus and where it crops up with the dates. So it's like this is the first instance, and it's like a little small blue dot in China, and then it starts getting bigger, and then you have some other little blue dots, and then it jumps to California, and so it's now like orange because it's developed certain mutations.
Yeah, it's almost like evolution is happening right in front of our eyes, isn't it?
Whoa! No, what is it? What did they say? Mutation and natural selection isn't evolution. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I what I like to do with the creationist guys, or the evolution deniers in particular, is give them the definition of evolution that I've witnessed and ask them what it is. And they say, well, it's adaptation within kinds. And then we're onto a whole additional level of bullshit. Sorry, guys, there's a reason I don't debate evolution versus creation. It's because one of these is a fantasy and the other one isn't. And yeah, I've got better things to do. Sorry.
We've got some new people, including Mel's in here now. Hello, Mel and Dalton. And yeah, we got lots of people. We got 24 people watching right now. We're doing pretty well. Grab your friends, bring them in.
Yeah, grab your friends. I'm happy to insult them. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Oh no, it's fine. I don't rely on I don't do like. I mean, I get AdSense, but I'm not reliant on it. I have like a job outside of YouTube, so we can insult anyone that we want. It doesn't matter.
That's great. Let's prioritize any questions that Standing for Truth or his boyfriend have.
I haven't seen them in here yet. I don't know if they'll drop. They usually don't drop by. C Brown was the only one who dropped in occasionally on my live streams, but I muted him because he is the same as them. Just there's no point. And he was kind of
I mean, anytime Nephilim Free wants to talk about his lunar bukkake whales on the moon nonsense.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Neff, I mean, just to be clear, I'm going to be washing my hair forever. Well, we're never going to discuss that because you're not even potato. You can't even get to sub-potato level.
French fry. He's only at French fry level. Not even potato level.
Oh, dear. It all makes sense if you ignore everything.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh my goodness. What were we saying? Yeah, adaptation is not evolution. It's funny because there are some really neat videos. There was one at some university where I'm sure you've seen it. They have this gigantic auger plate, and they increase by magnitude the antibiotic concentration. Yeah, and I love that that intelligent design people and creationists will watch that and go, "That's not evolution." What?
No, it really isn't. And I mean, if we want to jump back a little bit, I know they're spastics and they can't really deal with abiogenesis and protobiotic chemistry as a concept. But so if I randomly synthesize polynucleotides and some of them can copy themselves with errors to make a variable population that responds to selective pressure, at what precise point in that whole process is magic involved?
All of it. Well, they'd say intelligence was involved.
No,
QED.
I mean, it's a random thing. I speed it up with enzymes, but they're only speeding things up that otherwise happen. And then you get a thing that can make copies of itself and kind of evolve. I'm still waiting for the Jesus part to come into that because I've not seen it yet.
Well, you're just not looking hard. You have to put on your creation
my God glasses. My God glasses.
And then you'll see. It's like he's guiding them, with the electrons and making sure that all the pairing rules are being obeyed and all that. But
yeah,
Regardless.
I want to get in touch with Yahweh actually and go third base wobble. That was a fucking beautiful thing, man. How you put third base wobble in there is awesome because it's like selective pressure that gets you kind of halfway where you need to be. So thanks for that. I really appreciate the chemistry there. It's kind of nice and yet self-evident.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So,
or wait a minute, was Yahweh for third base wobble, or was that Zeus or Vishnu? I forget now.
they're all the same.
Yeah, they are.
I know you said you won't debate creationists, which I understand. There's no,
No,
maybe
I'll eviscerate creationists and make fun of them, but debate they don't qualify for debate because they don't have data. So,
But would you debate flat earthers? What about that?
No, flat earthers can all shampoo my sextant and explain to me why celestial navigation with a clock, a compass, and a timepiece. Sorry, clock, sextant, timepiece chart works when it can only work on a curved surface and on no other surface. And it works really well. And I use it not because I have to, but because it's fun and I like to prove a point,
I tweeted just the other day. I've hit upon the death knell of flat Earth and its basic trigonometry.
Yeah.
It really is. What is his name? Cool Hard Logic did a video. I don't know. I love. I've actually brought up the Boeing that flies from Australia to South Africa argument with fluffers.
I've been on that flight.
You've been on that? Okay, awesome.
I've done it many times. And I'm like, I've never once seen fucking Europe.
Or the Himalayas. Or
never flown over the Alps. No, that doesn't happen. And I've been awake through the whole thing. I tried it. I did it specifically. It's like, nope. Coffee, not vodka, please. I'm staying awake just to make sure.
I think the gas that they pump into the cabin is sleep gas because I can't get on a plane and not fall asleep. I don't know.
Wait a minute. I mean, one of my great grandfathers was Jewish, so I'm probably in on it. But when I used to live in the Arctic, I'd be like, it's been dark here for the last 10 weeks. So the sun's like a flashlight in a warehouse. It might not grow my tomatoes, but I'd be able to see it. Where the fuck is it?
Well, I love that. If the sun, if this were a flat Earth, the sun would be a lamp with a lampshade, basically.
Magic shape-shifting lampshade.
Magic shape on the floating pizza. Yeah. Oh my god.
And it's shape-shifting in a really interesting way because it looks different to you than it does to me, and none of it makes fucking sense. I mean, at one point I was like, I'm on a boat on a fjord, and I can see the cathedral, which is far, far away, but I can't see my house, which is on the edge of the fjord, because I'm over the fucking curve. And it's dark, and it's been dark for 10 weeks. So, come on, Flat Earth. You have to do better. It doesn't explain where I'm catching my dinner, Please explain it.
Right. We have a question from... this one came from Sygart. I've been trying to convince James from Modern Day Debate to stop platforming Flat Earth since conspiracy theories are dangerous now. Thoughts? I think... Yeah, I think you get to a point where you've heard all of their arguments and they're not doing anything more than show. And we've kind of passed that point, so I kind of agree with you on that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Doug?
The argument of the flat Earth is interesting to me in one respect only. And it's interesting as an illustration of how easy it is for anti-intellectualism to creep into a sophisticated society. And in all of the other instances when that's happened, it never ends well. And that distresses me very much. So the Earth isn't flat. We've known it's not flat for, a couple of thousand years at least. Our technology and infrastructure depends upon the fact that we got it right. And yeah, I mean, the concept that it is flat is an absurdity at this point.
You're right. It absolutely is. Um, yeah, once you basically once you know how to do trig, basically,
Yeah.
once you can work with angles and you can do arc lengths, and you
Yeah.
can compare the arc length on a flat, on a disc, on a pancake to that on a sphere, then sorry, flat Earth is done.
It is.
It's over.
None of the things that actually happen that we understand can happen if the Earth is a magic cosmic snow globe. It's that ridiculous. But I find it interesting because there is a group that there is a community, there is a group of people who thrive on this pre-Bronze Age understanding of their reality, and I find that remarkable and awe-inspiring, but not awe-inspiring in a good way.
It's more like you poor dears, you know.
Yeah. And I see it more as a group of somewhat bright but completely amoral scumbags exploiting the lowest of the low in terms of intellectual capability. Like, for instance, um, Anthony Riley, to a greater extent, Nathan Thompson, the Globebusters people. These individuals are, quite frankly, grifting scumbags, and they know it.
Mhm.
And they are exploiting the most vulnerable essence of our community, the people who don't know their ass from a rat hole.
I saw, yeah, I saw a tweet just the other day which reminded me of that with uh what is it, if I became a conservative grifter on YouTube, I could make so much money. Too bad I have morals.
Yeah, I mean, precisely. I mean, I could, I do to a limited extent do pseudo-religious things, such that I'm a humanist preacher and I do funerals and christenings and all that stuff. And I can really lay it on. And if I put Jesus in there, I could increase my salary by about 900% at the click of a finger. But being a person of integrity is really, really important to me and my community. So I'll never do that. And you can offer me $1 million and I'll tell you to shove it up your ass.
Yeah.
But there's always a group of low-end bottom feeders who will feed off the most vulnerable. And if you can convince someone that the earth is flat, I can convince them to buy $5,000 worth of magic beans.
Yeah. We have a question from Mel. Can you explain what kind means in your best Hoven voice? Doc, I want to hear you attempt this first.
Yeah, I won't give Hoven the pleasure of my voice. Kind is a meaningless creationist term that flexes depending upon the data that they're presented with, and it has no conceptual meaning in biology whatsoever.
This is actually relevant to a recent video. I'll do it in a sec though. Once I
Please do, please do.
with the video that Rational Mind posted, because the video he did was an absolute slam dunk on all fronts. It was terrific, very well done, and I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing whatsoever to do with it.
It was a good piece.
And I have to say that because Standing commented during Raw Matt's failed attempt at rebutting it. Standing said that I had to go and get Ration to debunk his stuff, which frankly I don't ever watch Standing's channel because I consider it punching down. So, you know, but
Um,
Ration though was like, "Hey, can I I have an idea for a video. I want to do a script for this. And I was like, okay, fine. And then a few days later, he was like, would you mind if I just did the whole thing? I've got the whole vision and everything. I was like, yeah, sure. Just do whatever. Just email me the MP4 when you're done. And so we did, and I just uploaded it. And so, yeah, and it was fantastic. It was a fantastic video, and I think it's great.
It was really well done, and I mean, my role, I think, in the world for this lifetime is at least to boil things down to the most basic and try and make fun of it. To any of the creationists, come up with a paired clues key or a rational schema that allows me to distinguish between one kind and another.
Good
Because
luck.
if you want, I can do that for you for kingdom, phylum, class, gene, genus, and species in an academically valid way. But the best I've seen Kent Hovind come up with is I could show a group of 5-year-olds a chicken and a pine tree and some other bullshit, and he'll get the answer that he wants. And none of that is meaningful. It's meaningful.
I would love to show him.
Yeah, I mean that scheme is meaningful if you have an entirely uneducated, and that's not a criticism, but an entirely uneducated audience in that concept. You will be lauded as super smart, but it doesn't mean you are. It just means your audience don't know dick.
Right. Peter, your screen is our screen. It was like the YouTube video screen. I don't know why.
That's correct.
But, I mean, okay.
Sorry.
Interesting. It's like right now. It's screen within screen. We lost Doc. Oh no.
Doc,
I guess I'll have to distract everyone with my juggling.
Doc ran away. I can do some juggling on screen. There you go. Juggle.
Okay. Well, that's good. Let's see. Can I explain what a kind is in my Hovind voice? I can try because he's from the South, just like me.
Yeah, you should make
All
sure
right.
you definitely say water, like otter.
So you have to drink water, and while you're drinking your water.
As a little aside there, Jackson, did you see Hovind not apologize for the 7-year-old who drowned to death?
I did. Yeah.
I watched that and I thought, I'm watching someone who is evil right here, right now, because that child's parents were in the audience for that travesty, where he said, well, at least your other 2 kids who survived had a great time. I mean, 2, you had 3, now you've got 2. It's a fair trade, really, isn't it?
They all had a great time.
Mother. I mean, he did that, and he broadcast it. And you know what it reminded me of more than anything? It's a really chilling thing from the Nuremberg war trials, where Rudolf Höss, the commandant of Auschwitz, stood up and went, yeah, I built all the crematoria and the thing and the whatnot because that was my job and it was all good, right? Why am I even here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I can do the voice. A kind is when you can get a 5-year-old to look at 4 pictures and say one is not like the other. Okay, drink your water. That's about as good as I got. Sorry.
I've got well, everyone knows that pine trees and elephants are different. Therefore, Jesus and creation. Right?
I think one thing I would love to do with I'd love to take his 5-year-old of his choice and show them a picture of 4 protozoans all distantly related to each other and ask them which one is not like the other 3, which one is not like the others. And, I think that'd be fun because then you can go, actually, all of them are totally different.
I showed my 5-year-old at the time a picture of Ken Ham, Kent Hovind. Who was the other one?
Ray Comfort.
Ray Comfort and PragerU guy. The PragerU guy.
Dennis Prager, yeah.
Yeah, and I said, Alexander, which one of these men would you trust? And he looked at me and went, Dad, I'd punch them all in the dick. And I'm like, that's my boy. Don't trust any of these people, Tim. That's 5-year-old.
I love that. Oh yeah, that's pretty funny. I love that Prager, who was already a historical revisionist and climate change denialist, has now jumped on the intelligent design creationism bandwagon. I mean, it shocked me not at all, but it had to happen eventually. So
did you happen to see the trajectory, the overall process of the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial? Because these guys are really inept. I mean, they're not even good at what they're trying to do. They took the Of Pandas and People book and removed by find and replace all of
the
creationists.
C design proponentsists. Yeah, I remember.
And it was so bad that they obviously never had an editor because some of them were really disjointed. But every version of creationism was changed to intelligent design, and it was a direct switch over. These guys, although they may have strong, passionate views, aren't good at what they claim to be inspired to do. So if the God that's driving this is omnipotent, it's a real issue because these guys are not smart.
Yeah, which is sad because a number of them have terminal degrees, in different fields, and the fact that they can't adequately do research is really sad.
Well, I noticed that Casey Luskin is a really strong advocate about some bizarre biochemical things, and I'm sure his law degree gives him a lot of latitude in discussion of things like that. I mean, I'm sure I might call him if I needed to go to traffic court, but he's completely out of his depth.
Yeah, RJ and I wrote a section of our book. So buy the Roxford there, everybody. There you go. I'll probably link that down below.
It's awesome.
Shill for myself.
And I mean, while we're talking
you got it?
We're talking about professionals. So there's Casey Luskin and there's also Georgia Purdom. Georgia, you sold your scientific integrity a long time ago, and everything that comes out of your mouth now, from this point on, is without value because you're a lying bitch. You willfully misrepresent the science that you trained to understand.
And we document her too.
Yeah. So go fuck yourself, Georgia.
You said you have the book. Have you started reading it?
I know I'm trying to punt your book. I will buy a copy because.
Oh, okay. Oh, I gotcha. Well, it's funny you mentioned Purdom because we have a section on her too where she blatantly misrepresents a couple of different papers. Actually, one of them, this paper talking about the effects of beneficial mutations, and quite understandably, a section of the paper discusses, well, what does it mean for a mutation to be beneficial in a given environment? And she takes the one sentence where it kind of has that discussion. It mentions that, and she says the entire paper is just a word game, even though the very next paragraph is literally a paragraph of citations for beneficial mutations. So
I have a great deal of time and empathy and willingness to invest my own time in dealing with folks who are understandably uninformed about specialist fields. Georgia Purdom isn't one of those people. She is spectacularly well informed and is willfully dishonest. And I can't understand that. and I pity her very deeply. And another one is not Andrew Wakefield, although he's a scumbag of a different ilk,
Andrew
but
Snelling.
Snelling, yeah, who
Yep.
misrepresents his own papers when he's presenting his own data to the young Earth community while publishing it in legitimate journals because it's legitimate work.
Yeah.
So, as far as I can tell, he's a lying piece of shit.
Yeah.
And
It's very curious.
he certainly has absolutely no scientific integrity. And if I met him, I'd probably punch him right in the throat, just on general principles. Because once you sell your shit like that, you can never buy it back. And that's the deal. So, good luck with that. And if he is sincere in his beliefs as a Christian, let's assume that for the purposes of this discussion,
Sure.
he's 100% sincere. Okay. He's burning in hell along with me because he's bearing false witness and he knows it. And it's that simple. So I've always hoped that if there is a deity, he would have both a sense of humor and a sense of honor. And I think I'm pretty fine with any deity of that sort. And any other sort, I'm not going to fucking worship anyway. If you have to lie to make your crust, you need to get a different job.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very strange that they have to literally, they have to try to be as bad at representing technical literature as they do. It's not accident. It's not like,
No, it's willful.
yeah, it's there's no way you could read this paper and come away with this conclusion unless you're standing for truth, raw matter, Nephilim free.
Yeah, those guys are retarded. I mean, I'm going to speak bluntly about it. But I
for
remember
a professional.
Yeah, I remember reading jw.org about basic biochemistry and abiogenesis and evolution. And I read it and went, okay, this is distressing. Why is it distressing? And I thought, it's distressing because anyone who wrote this is sufficiently well informed to know that they are, in fact, misrepresenting what they're saying. There's no additional option to that. This is a willful and completely premeditated intent to misrepresent. And most people aren't equipped to counter that. You are,
Absolutely.
I am, and that's why it's an outrageous thing. Especially when, kids and old people and other people actually die as a result of it.
Oh yeah, I when I was at LSU Baton Rouge, we had these various groups of street preachers who would come by and scream at the kids and talk about how sex and evolution and all that is bad and whatnot. And I sat down and I talked to one of them, and I was asking him about, like, are you a young Earth creationist? And I was trying to talk to him about phylogenetics. Like, okay, do you think dogs and bears are related to each other? Here are these synapomorphies that they share. Here's how we know they're related also to weasels and seals, and they're related to cats.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And if you've interacted with any of these animals at any time, it's freaking obvious. Yeah. And I used to dive a lot and basically swim around in the Arctic Ocean. The seals were like dogs. I mean, there was a seal that would come and hang out with me when I was fishing, and it'd be like, "Oh, how you doing?" It would woof at me. I'd give it a fish every now and then, and it looked like a spaniel. And the behavior was exactly the same. And notwithstanding the nested hierarchy of anatomical features, phenotype and genotype that all map beautifully onto each other independently without kind of subjective stuff coming in.
Yeah.
If it behaves like a Labrador and has the genotype of a Labrador and happens to live in the ocean, it's probably related to a dog.
Yeah. And I have heard that the Louisiana black bears are also kind of like dogs, and in that they're not like a grizzly bear. They're not going to just go after you. They're more sort of, just kind of leave them
Yeah.
alone and they'll mind their own business,
Yeah, I mean, you throw one of those guys a quiche and it's quite happy. It's not going to eat you. A grizzly will fuck you up, Um, but here's the thing: if it hadn't been the primates, if it hadn't been us, it would have been the raccoons and the bears
Yeah,
because they've got prehensile shit and they're really smart. And I've seen raccoons do things you wouldn't believe. Like
Oh, yeah.
a raccoon will steal your lunch out of the trunk of your car. So if there had been a few other selective mortalities, we might all be bear people rather than ape people.
Yeah, that would be that would probably make for a really interesting sci-fi novel, alternative
Yeah.
history or something like that.
I mean, I'd like to be 11 feet tall with razor sharp teeth and claws, but here I am, a smart, bald, upright, talking monkey.
Well, you can't win them all, right?
I don't think we did badly, but here's the thing, Kent Hovind. All the stuff that you think is completely bizarre, we worked it out. Yeah,
right.
we really did.
We need to get. I do want to get back to some of the questions we've been asked. Matthew Galliano, I don't know. Sorry. Did you hear the flat earthers claiming blowing the hot air from your hair dryer will kill the COVID-19 virus? How much more dangerous do you think they are now due to this?
What are your thoughts, Jackson?
Well, what do I think about it? I was really tossing it to you. My thoughts are round them up, put them against a brick wall.
All right. If you're going to inhale your hair dryer, you're really going to annoy your domestic partner who needs to use that hair dryer, and you're going to upset your neighbors, and you're going to scald your delicate mucous membranes. So don't do that. It won't do dick, and it'll annoy everybody. Yeah, if you do that, what you really need to do is take your head, right, and slam it in your fridge door.
Can we start a GoFundMe and buy those people steam rockets? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Steam rockets, or slam your head in your fridge door until you lose consciousness and bleed out on the floor. Because, you are not contributing to humanity, and you'd be a better value to, our whole species if you became a grease stain on the pavement.
Food for the worms, so they can keep, keep the flowers happy, right?
Blood makes the grass grow, and sometimes that's the best a man can get. And I speak as a suicidal depressive, so I'm talking about me here.
Well, our next question comes from scientist Mel herself, and I did actually hear about this one, and it depresses me all the same. Did you all know that Trump says the virus is a genius and that antibiotics can't keep up? I actually retweeted Dark Matter 2525 quote tweeting that, saying he thinks antibiotics are for viruses. The president, the most powerful man in the Western Hemisphere, thinks antibiotics are for viruses.
Yeah, and let's be clear. This is important information that not everyone has. But if you're talking about a pandemic, it's 101. It's the first thing that viruses are not influenced by antimicrobial chemotherapy or antibiotics. The reason for that is they're intracellular pathogens, and they use our machinery to do what they do. It's kindergarten level, or at least it's the first thing that Anthony Fauci told Trump every day for the last 3 months. It's not the same thing. You can't take penicillin to cure COVID. No, it's not the same thing. He told him this 3 times an hour every day for the last 3 months. But America, you elected both a fascist and a retarded fascist. You need to do better.
Yeah, I agree, but the Progressive Party took an Uzi to its foot in this last cycle, so you know.
It's anyone else, Joe the Ragman, the guy at the corner bodega.
Have you seen
your grandmother's aunt that she plays bridge with can do a better job?
What's his name? Vermin Supreme. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, I know him very well.
I love that guy. He wears the boot and like 30 ties. I love that guy.
If you elected any one of the cast of the Muppet Show,
we bring back Jim Henson and elect him president.
Seriously, if you had President Trump on the stage with a fucking bag on his head and a ball gag in his mouth, he would be doing better than he is doing now by saying, well, some people say you should wear a mask, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Yeah, great. You just killed 2,000 people.
Oh.
2,000 of them. You just killed 2,000 people.
Yeah.
When you said those words, 2,000 people dead.
We also have to remember this is the guy who stared at a solar eclipse. So, you know.
I mean, the guy's a moron for sure. I mean, he knows dick all about anything, and he's a scam artist and a snake oil salesman. And democracy's great because you're going to get rid of him, but he just killed thousands of people. Let's be very clear about that. The guy's a criminal against humanity for his blatant ignorance.
I know this is very serious, and I just keep thinking about Kermit the Frog.
I mean, dude, it's really serious. It's really serious, and it's really funny at the same time because, we're all doomed on a long enough timeline, and we're just playing games until that happens. But he's not helping. And when he gets up and says stuff that I'm like, if I was making a script on how to fucking murder people, it wouldn't be that different.
Yeah. There was a video that the Sesame Street did a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was an older video, but I saw it a couple of years ago, and it was basically Kermit. And no, it wasn't Kermit. It was Elmo. Elmo goes and gets the flu vaccine, and I don't remember who he was. He was talking with somebody who was some medical professional, and he's explaining, but these are all the benefits of getting the flu vaccine, not just for yourself, but also for other people.
Elmo was talking to the Surgeon General of the United States at that point, and I thought it was beautiful. And
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If there's ever going to be a moment where I think I've done something useful, it's when the Muppet people call me up and say, do you want to come on the show? I'll be like, I won't be busy on that day. I'll be there. But here's the thing. Any Muppet, the Swedish Chef, would be a better chef and a better president than your actual president.
Oh my God. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Bork. That would do better than, masks might help you, but I'm not doing it.
It's so sad that that's true because you can't understand what he's saying. Meanwhile, on the other hand, as Mel points out, Trump is saying you can take a hydroxychloroquine, which is going to help you with the virus.
No.
I gotta close my door again because the cat came in. 1 second.
The cat came back, and if you get that as a 1970s reference, you win an extra prize. So I've spent some time in Iceland, and I got a call from a guy over there who's like, should I invest in this company developing hydroxychloroquine? And I said, Robert, you might be a little bit ahead of the curve on that. If you want to sell it to Americans who know dick all, you might make some money, but you're not going to really be helping people. It's a great drug if you've got malaria. And by the way, guys, COVID-19 isn't malaria. Sorry.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's and he was telling them like you could take it in, or like encouraging people to take it in large quantities, which would be detrimental to you, you
When,
know. And
when he says chloroquine, and some people might say hydroxychloroquine. I'm like, yeah, some people who actually know chemistry might say that because it's quite important. You moron. If this guy came up and they put duct tape over his mouth and put him in front of the podium for 2 hours every day, unable to say a word to the world, fewer people would die.
yeah, uh, so I heard Vandalia says, so I heard they're talking about replacing antibiotics with bacteria phase. Is that
Bacteriophage.
bacteriophages? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Bacteriophages. I have not. I mean, that's interesting, but I have not heard of that. What is that
Yeah.
happening?
It's one of many options that's explored as an opportunity to expand upon the kind of specific bacterial toxins that antibiotics are. Other options are antimicrobial peptides, interfering nucleic acid signals, and bacteriophages are one. But as a general rule, if you introduce another thing to an ecosystem that's an actual biological entity, it tends to get kind of uncontrollable. So it's an option, but one of many that is being looked at. Colloidal silver is good for topical bacterial infections, but don't ingest it because you'll turn blue like Papa Smurf.
Yeah, that is interesting. I had not heard of that, but that is very interesting. So, that's something I guess I'll have to do a bit of research on.
I mean, this comes back to a whole ecosystem analysis, and the old rhyme is: big bugs have little bugs upon their backs to bite them, and
Mm.
little bugs have lesser bugs, and so ad infinitum, meaning that we're complex eukaryotic organisms, and we have less complex organisms that live with us and in us and on us, and we depend on
Right.
them and
Yeah.
them on us, and stuff eats them too.
Mitochondria is a bacterium. Oh.
Exactly. We would not be us without them, and bacteria have bacteriophages that are diseases for them, but also diseases that change them into other things, which is kind of cool. And none of this is within the remit of the creationist camp because they don't understand and have no knowledge of this entire complex web of fields of actual science.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting when they talk about, evolution is not true. Well, why can we use it to describe the origination of new strains, new variants of viruses? We can track them biogeographically. We can see how they spread, and all this sort of stuff. And none of you guys are doing that. And if you're claiming it's all just within the created kinds, why not? Shouldn't you theoretically also be able to do this?
See, you're overthinking it.
But
I mean, my response to that is
I apologize.
if any aspect of evolution is untrue, then which aspect is it? And they come up always with the same answer, and the same answer is you've never seen a pine tree give birth to a whale. And when I point out that that would actually disprove evolution, the entire structure falls down because they're critiquing something that they fundamentally don't understand. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
I see. Have you watched the recent documentary claiming that the virus came from a lab in China? If you have, what do you think about it? I have.
It's bullcrap.
I've read the paper, and can I respond very
Go
briefly to
ahead.
this?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Take as long as you need.
Yeah, it didn't come from a lab in China, and the paper that is cited doesn't say that it did, and it's a bunch of balls. Viruses like this come from mixed dirty places with blood and shit and vomit and feces all over the place, and cut hands, and they've done this for many years, and we've traced them back molecularly to that level. So yeah, it's not a bioweapon, and if I was picking a bioweapon, it would be a shitty bioweapon.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no proof to support this whatsoever. But it's comforting if people are scared to think someone thought about this and did it, rather than nature can fuck you up.
It's just out of the blue, out of space
Yeah.
somewhere where we have no control over any of it.
Yeah, congratulations, you're an apex predator. Deal with this shit. And for people who are unaware of or unwilling to learn about our species history, we've survived this kind of thing dozens, if not hundreds of times in recent, ancient, and almost immediate history. So this isn't a new thing. It's not an unexpected thing. It's not Jesus or God fucking us over for sodomy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're a biological species in a biome, and we're top predator. That doesn't mean we're invulnerable. So before you start invoking magic and all kinds of stuff, actually learn the biology, because we understand this really, really well.
We talked a little bit about it. Oh, bye, Mel. Thanks for coming and watching. She says, "Bye, Doc." We talked a little bit about, because right before we did the video, a paper came out, the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2, which talks about the like almost literally step by step mutations and natural selection that as the virus made the jump to a going from not being very it's not lethal, and as we talked about earlier, it's not super lethal because it chose the mutations it was selected for communicability, and so it attaches it attacks a lot of it is spread very easily, but it's not very likely to kill you, or it's less likely to kill you than if it were highly lethal, but less communicable, as we discussed earlier. And so the paper was very interesting, talking about which specific mutations and which selective pressures would have been put on the virus to kind of push it in this direction. And we linked that in the description of the video, so if anyone wants to go check that out, you should. And we also mentioned how there was the you heard about the people. There was a lab claiming that it had HIV inserts.
Yeah, that's absolutely bogus.
Right. Yeah, because the alleged inserts aren't unique to HIV, as the paper showed. Even other organisms have these sequences. So
yeah. And I mean, let's be very clear for the lay audience here. In terms of genetic mutability, how easy it is for a thing to change. RNA viruses with segmented genomes are like the Formula One racing car of genetic change. We are like maybe a tortoise with 3 legs in comparison. And I'm making that comedic comment to describe the fundamental biochemistry that differs between us and a virus of this type. This is a thing that has generation time is 20 some years. Theirs is minutes. And instead of one baby, they're having 150,000 of them per cell that's infected. So it's a whole different level of change. RNA
Right.
genomes copy themselves less perfectly than DNA genomes. What it means is the one or two viruses in an infected person or host that do the virus thing better than the other ones go on to found the next population. So the whole thing moves really fast. And here's a question. Why do you get a different flu vaccine every year? The answer is exactly what I said over the last couple of minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not evolution. That's
No,
there's no change in virus kind. So
yeah, but okay, you can make that point if and when you can define a scheme by which you can define whether something is kind A or kind B. And they never can because it's a made up thing. There are kinds, and in the Bible, there are kinds and sorts and types, all within kinds or not, depending upon, I don't know. But as a 4-year-old Doc Savage in primary one, short pants, everyone smells of wee. They told me about the Noah boat, and I'm like, that's fucking ridiculous.
Mhm.
And from that point on, I was excluded from all the Jesus stuff because I'd be like, you can't really expect me to take that seriously, right? From 4 years old. And the teacher's like, no, not really. Just don't disrupt the thing. I'll go and sit outside and read a book, right? Or color in, or, do something useful
right.
rather than listen to this bullshit.
Yeah. I never had. I was raised a religious household, but nothing ever creationist. Fortunately, even though I am in the South, we're the Bible Belt down here, and so fortunately, I didn't really have to deal with that until I was older and like middle and high school.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I mean, no disrespect, whatever, but in my culture, it was the same in about 1810.
No, that's that. No, there's. I don't think it's. When you're just right about what you're saying, I don't think there's really disrespect implied. But
No, and I mean, here's the weird thing: I'm the guy that'll punch you in the face to defend the religious guy who wants to speak about how I'm a fucking scumbag.
yeah,
I'll defend his right to do that while saying, you're wrong and I know you're wrong, but I like living in a culture where you can be wrong. It's
right.
important that you're wrong. And then he'll tell
Yeah,
me I'm going to go to hell for eternity and whatnot,
it's 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 funny because uh, I got a book from a relative. The book is a creationist book written in 1967.
Oh, yeah.
So, substantially aged. But here's the funny thing, the arguments are word for word the same as any you would find on Answers in Genesis today.
Oh, of course. But Answers in Genesis have already updated. They say don't use this bogus argument. And most of Kent Hovens are in there. It's the old school Pratt points like dust on the moon. There isn't enough or there is enough, and none of it makes sense. But I think I'm gonna chime in here. I'm gonna get some money out of this. And I'm gonna write some kids' books for the religious belt in the US. I've got one in mind in particular. It's called If You Suck One Dick. Right?
You might sell a few copies. I mean,
Because I'm working it out. It's like, statistically, okay, if you do that once, you're a fag and you're going to burn in hell, and therefore that's done. That's a done deal. So the kids need this message, and I think they need a book like that. You can massacre people, you can genocide the firstborn of Egypt, you can keep slaves, you can sell your kids into slaves, but if you suck one dick, it's over. I mean,
right.
that's the mess. Am I misinterpreting? I might. Uh, uh, I think pretty
Yeah.
pretty clear the cocksucking bit. That's a deal breaker for Jesus, right?
Uh, yeah, it's it.
Is that
Yeah,
is that too dark?
no, I mean, I'm not entirely sure how to respond. You've got well, the direction that I was gonna thought the comment was gonna
I,
go.
I always like to get sodomy or fellatio in there where I'm talking to an audience that may include Christians, because I know it gets them a little bit worked up in that. They kind of need it.
Yeah, everyone likes to get worked up
Mm.
from time to time, but the one of the interesting points that I noticed in this creationist book from 1967 was genetic entropy. So 60s are before we had gene sequencing.
Yeah.
We couldn't actually look at, or compare sequences in different organisms yet. This book claimed back then that populations were constantly running down. They were like only deleterious mutations, no beneficial ones. This was back before we could look at the genes. They were claiming this. Well, we have the exact same arguments being made today by Sanford and his friends, because uh, it's just it's just a dogma that has to always be maintained because of the fall. There's no getting around that.
Yeah, it's an intellectually dishonest position, and if Sanford wants to talk about genetic entropy, he can show me the data. Let me ask you a question. As a biologist, Jackson, what happens to the
Well, I'm
most
not a biologist
top
yet.
and genetic entropic group in the population, the ones that are really wasted, they can't do dick? What does natural selection tend to do with that group?
Well, they just get wiped out. They don't
Yeah,
reproduce. They don't pass
they,
on their genes.
no, they're either never born or they don't thrive and survive. And funnily enough, the ones that are not fucked in terms of the old entropy tend to found all of the next generations. And Sanford's work throughout neglects that key aspect of biology, which is bizarre because it's a keystone. And the only concept that I can drive to understand that is that he's a lying piece of shit and he knows exactly what he's doing.
The, have you seen? You may have, when we did our video on genetic entropy, and I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a quote from Sanford where he admits there are no experiments with any long-term populations
No,
which exhibit genetic entropy.
no, there aren't, because there can't be, because of what you just said. And he also dramatically misrepresents the H1N1 data that,
Oh
or
my God! Oh,
perhaps that's standing for truth just being a retard, but I don't know. Essentially, his position is an entire tautology, and it's an embarrassment to anyone who understands the field, and he should know better. But clearly, he
yeah.
sold his integrity, and it's gone. I mean, he's never getting that back now.
The fact that he confuses pathogenicity with fitness is absurd. It's utterly astounding.
It is, unless it's a willful misrepresentation.
Yeah.
And at this point, I have very little charity for these guys. Sanford is a smart enough guy. He knows when he's lying.
Yeah, he was part of the team that invented the gene gun. You think it's like you think that he doesn't know about what he's saying? Yeah.
Yeah, he knows that he represents his science one way to the creationist argument audience who pay him, and differently the same data to the academic audience who fund him to a limited degree in the past, not anymore.
Okay.
And if you can do that, and I'm speaking directly to you as a human, you're a worthless piece of shit. and you need to give back all of your academic credentials because they're not worth dick. As soon as you start lying like that, no matter what your background, you're no longer a scientist. So like it, don't like it, that's the truth, and I can prove it, and you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah. That's
Let's not dick around and pander to people who are being dishonest and misleading the uninformed, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they know better, and their audience should know that they know better, but they don't. And people like Standing and Matt come along later and think, oh, this is real and true, and we're never going to fact check this because he's a scientist or was.
Standing and Matt should get along with the 21st century and realize that coming out is okay. You don't need to pretend, guys, because I mean, you love each other like mummies and daddies love each other. Just own it.
Well, well, at any rate, let's see. Do we have another? Terry James says, "Can you do a video on created heterozygosity?" Actually, there will be a video on that in the future. After my debate with Standing, I decided, or we decided to do a whole bunch of videos on kind of basic creationist misconceptions, and that's one of them. But after doing like 4 or 5 videos on creationism, I got kind of tired of it because it's really the same shtick over and over, just with a different. It's the same, tune, but in a different song, and so
I mean, I'll do a debate on created heterozygosity when you can demonstrate that the thing we're debating is a thing. And you can. How about this? Maybe Standing for Truth would like to do a debate with me about which one of us is a bitch. That would be fun. Let's try that. Why don't you bring your boyfriend and we can do a 2-on-1? Because you know what? I'll put my doctorate, life experience, and right hook up against everything you've got, because so far it's really sad, and you really need to focus on just how tragic it is. You're basically standing on the top of the mountain, yelling at an empty sky, while we are exploring Mars.
Yeah. Vandalia says, "How old is the newest creationist criticism out there?"
2,000 years old.
How old is the newest? Yeah, what is it? There's a play. There's like an ancient Greek play. During this play, I think it's Socrates and this farmer are having a conversation, and the farmer says, who causes the rain? It must be Zeus, right? And Socrates replies, if Zeus is necessary for the rain, why is it never rain without cloudy skies? And
Yep.
and so I think that's kind of it right there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, as a species, we're really smart, but we're not nearly as smart as we think we are, and we fill in all the gaps in our understanding with interesting, colorful stories that are easy to remember because we are evolved apes, and that's where gods live. And as our gaps in understanding decrease, so the space that the gods live in decreases. They're all real in the same way as Yoda is real, and they're all valuable in the same way as Yoda is valuable.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you do a video on human Y chromosome haplogroup and mitochondrial haplogroups? That would be interesting because Nathaniel Jensen hilariously misrepresents the haplogroup chart. He just like blows it all out of proportion and then says, aha, here it is, where if you actually run the numbers for it, it's completely different. Which again, he's another one. He knows what he's doing when he does that. So
I'll make a video on human Y chromosome haplogroup
Yeah.
mitochondrial haplogroup in response to Standing for Truth.
Yeah.
Exactly the same time as I make a video about Latin grammatical constructions with someone who doesn't speak any of that language or basis, someone who perhaps speaks Russian as a mother tongue and has never learned Latin. He's that far away from being ready to have that conversation that it serves no purpose. I may as well be talking Swahili.
Yeah, that's true. The mitochondrial haplogroups are also very interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, did you hear Standing for Truth talking about mitochondrial Eve being evidence for biblical Eve when mitochondrial Eve is dated at tens of
Yeah,
thousands of years
well, it's
prior
like
to the creation of the universe, according to
upwards of 130 or so thousand years ago is when she supposedly lived. But it's like one of the really important points is
Yeah.
mitochondrial Eve was not a person; it's a title
Yeah.
based on the group that you're choosing. There are different mitochondrial Eves for different groups. This just happens to be the one for the whole species.
Yeah, our common female ancestor, matrilineal ancestor for all of the ape people isn't grandma.
Right.
And even if it was, that grandma occurred orders of magnitude longer ago than you think the universe is. So, I mean, you're arguing for one, you're arguing for the other, and there's dick all evidence to support anything you say. Sorry. And the zoo boat when I was 4 years old made me piss my pants laughing. I was like, that never happened. That's ridiculous. And then we've got grown men arguing with other grown men who know shit. They all came off a boat in Anatolia, northern Turkey, about 5,000 years ago. My people were building cathedrals at that point, and we didn't notice being wiped out in the flood. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with the Sumerians were making beer. The Chinese were, making creeks and all sorts of things. The Egyptians
Ceramics. I mean, that was all happening.
Yeah.
Nope, that's all fake. It's all fake.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and it all makes perfect sense if you ignore any evidence that contradicts your position. And I don't care about people's beliefs, but I care when they're being dishonest. And well, if dinosaurs and scary big creatures didn't exist, why have I got a 5-inch long megalodon tooth on my thing over here? Is that magic? Is that a real thing? I mean, come on. It's exhausting, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's like whack-a-mole. It just never ends. They just go on and on. They'll latch on to something new. Then once they give up with that, they'll go back to the first argument and pretend nothing was ever said. I guess it's back to my juggling. Well, at any rate, we've
beyond a certain point, it goes right back to the Kalam cosmological argument, which gets you to I don't know rather than my particular flavor of God. So I don't really get it.
Right. At any rate, we've now been going over an hour and a half. So, and I think this has been a really fun conversation. We've had some good questions from the audience. Is there anything you want to add? Any points you want to make?
It's been a great deal of fun, and I really appreciate it. It's getting on for 5 a.m. here, so I should probably go. Let me just show everyone this while we're here because it's fun and kind of cool.
Ooh,
Do you know what that is? Just to give you some scale. That's about 4.5 inches. So that's a megalodon tooth that hasn't been dated by carbon dating, but has been dated by 3 other methods. Guess how old it is?
How old is it?
It's 9.8 million years old.
Awesome.
Plus or minus about 50 to 100,000. So
Sure.
I mean, we're 10 times older than the universe is. Sorry, guys. And it's beautiful, and you can actually cut ham with it. It's that sharp.
Jeez. Thank you again for coming on. I know we talked a lot about creationists, but we did also talk about COVID and that fun stuff, and and flat earthers, and yeah, I had a really good time.
Yep, me too. And if there are any questions that come up, I'll give them considered attention, and I'd be delighted to come back and do this again. Again, Jackson, I really appreciate your work. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Don't let them grind you down. And a warning from someone who's been on the dark side: if you stare too long into the Tard abyss, it will stare back at you, and you need to step back from it. You need to decouple from it every now and then. I recommend at least 10 times a year, and just make fun of them. So come on Psychic Vampires podcast, because that's what we do. Make fun of dangerous idiots.
Sure. I'll come on.
Comedy is the vaccine against the kind of dangerous morons that we deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.